Hello all, and welcome to this very first episode of Expert Speak. Today, we're going to talk all about the job scenario in 2021, which is this year, and a few things related to it, like things about remote hiring and what can you do to stand out in the job market as a job seeker. And let me introduce myself. I'm Sangeeta Deshpande. I'm the founder of Story Weavers in Singapore. And this is an organization that believes in giving people the superpower of storytelling. And we believe a lot in real impact. And with that thought in mind, this idea of the series has come up. And so I've decided to speak to experts on a regular basis so that we can leverage on their wisdom and their experience to actually make progress in life. And without further ado, I would like to tell you that I have two very fabulous, extremely successful, yet extremely humble panelists with me, Gauri Das and Tulika Tripathi. Let me go and introduce Gauri Das. Gauri Das is in my hometown, Mumbai, and she is a strategic HR leader with around 14 years of experience in crafting and aligning HR strategy and business goals. She carries a wealth of experience with both startups and well established companies. And I must tell you, the most striking thing about this woman is her posts on LinkedIn. They are so real. I feel positive with them. Not just that, it is easy to see through her passion for people and enriching their lives. No wonder then that she is the winner of many awards and accolades like HR 100 under 40, Top HR Mind India, and even LinkedIn Person of the Year 2020. So it's like, bravo, bravo to that. And she mentors students and professionals alike. She is interested in women empowerment, and she also leads a lean in circle called Leaders Lifting Leaders. Gauri, would you like to add on something for us?
Thank you so much, Sangeeta. Thank you so much for inviting me here. And I really loved what you said, that superpower of storytelling. And this time, this pandemic has given us loads of story for generations to come. So yeah, I also believe in power of storytelling, and that's how we have been encouraging ourselves and also motivating others, ourselves both. So in terms of you have already shared a lovely experience. So thank you. Introduction. Thank you so much for it. Just to add, I'm currently working as head of HR for a non-bank. It's promoted by a European bank, and my role involves supporting people in their career progression, making it a great place to work. We just got a great place to work certification. Outside work, it's about supporting people, like you said, mentoring professionals and students, and women empowerment. And besides that, I truly believe in networking as well. So I'm core committee member for LinkedIn Local Navi Mumbai. And networking doesn't end there. It's also, I'm also part of Professional Speakers Association of India, Mumbai chapter, and VP lead for membership. So here again, we can interact with people, learn with them, loads of things. So that's me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gauri. Looking forward to have a great discussion with you. And now let's bring in another powerhouse of a woman, Tulika Tripathi. Tulika is the founder of SnapHunt, a smart hiring platform that helps people find jobs and employers find and hire talent quickly and, more importantly, accurately. She's passionate about making hiring accurate and transparent. Not just that, she has over 2 decades of experience, and during this experience, she has been an instrument in not just starting up or growing, but turning around businesses in multiple geographies. She has extensive experience in recruitment and at senior leadership levels in global recruitment firms like Michael Page in Geneva, in Singapore, in India, and also with Hudson Global. She is also the author of Alice in Corporate Land, a book on achieving success. When I first spoke to Tulika, what struck me most about her is she's a problem solver. She doesn't look at a job seeker and a job as merely something to do. She thinks it's very much like a marriage. If you're stuck in the wrong marriage, what would your life be like? That's exactly what she thinks about a person working and his work. So true, I thought. I never thought of it that way. And what I thought when I was talking to her was she is extremely inspiring. So you'll know that shortly when she starts speaking. And so here we go. Before we start, just some house rules. I would say guests, please refrain from starting your videos. You are allowed to chat just with me, the host. So after I'm done with my questions, it's open to you if you wish to ask any questions to our panel of speakers. And if there is a non-repetition, I would definitely put it up for them. I hope you can get tons of advice from them today. And the one thing that I want you to take back home today is how do you stand out in this job market? How do you make the most of it? With that, let's begin. So 2020, as we all know, was full of pandemic and lots of jobs got lost, markets crashed, and everything bad happened. But some good things happened too. With 2021, now that January is over, we are in Feb. What do you think about the current job market? Do you see a light at the end of the tunnel? Or is this the light of an oncoming train from the other side? Maybe Gauri, you can go first.
Very pertinent question, and I'm sure it's in mind of everyone alike, because 2020, it's not only about those who lost jobs, but it's also about realignment for everybody, because digitization accelerated everything. Everything has changed. It's hybrid model and a lot of adaptation that we are looking at. So some are still working from home, some are back to office, and across the globe, it's different scenario everywhere. If you look at certain countries, they are facing second, third, or a new wave of the virus, and that is why they are still not progressing much. In other countries, like for us in India, the PMI for service was increased by 1% in January, but manufacturing got dropped, and talks are on whether it would be V-shaped recovery or it would be W-shaped recovery. But all in all, it looks like that all economies will be expanding in 2021, because there was a for sure contraction everywhere except China, as we know. So it can be between 1.6 to say 9%, different projections. But overall, it looks like that there will be growth in terms of how things are happening today, and that will create jobs. So this quarter, the first quarter of 2021, is going to be a good quarter in terms of jobs, and people are optimistic not only about jobs but also increments and bonuses also. If we talk about financial industry, where I come from, so the projections are good that things would be good, but there are certain industries like travel, where there are a lot of challenges and things are not going to be smooth very soon. So it depends where you are today, but there are certain skills. So I would say wherever the market goes, we have no control on that. Like we say, it's internal access of control or external access of control. So it's all about having whatever we can do. And no matter what's happening, we have to create a place for ourselves. So as we progress ahead in the conversation, I would definitely come forward with what we can do now, but yeah, it's a mixed scenario, VW, but whatever, it's going to be positive. That's what I'm hoping.
Thanks for that, Gauri. Over to you, Tulika. What is your insight on, where are we heading right now?
Snap-on's a hiring platform. We track job trends and across industries, and also we have jobs across multiple countries, almost 20 countries on the platform. And what we've seen is definitely a recovery going into Q4 and a marked recovery coming into January. I think companies, as they close their budgets in Q3 and with early news of vaccine, were generally positive in their outlook in 2021, so have opened up more head counts, based on that. having said that, with all these sort of issues with rollout, etc., we may see some of those headcounts getting pushed out into Q2 or Q3. But in general, we are seeing very positive trends. The second piece, which I think is massively interesting at right now, is the rise of remote hiring. So on our platform, we're starting to see a very significant number of new jobs being remote. Gauri briefly touched upon hybrid models, but initially when companies started, talking about remote hiring, they were talking about, is she still here? Have we lost her?
Yeah, you are host now.
Oh, I was wondering.
Let's continue because we have our audience.
I've got some people coming in, so I'll invite them in, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, so initially, I think when we what we started to see is that companies, when we first went into a lockdown, were looking at remote work as a temporary thing. When that got extended, companies started looking at remote work or a telecommute type of an option, which is flexi remote. People can come in and out of the office, and that's working. But what we're starting to see specifically in developed countries, Gauri, again, you mentioned that there's been this massive digitization. With all consumers going online because of all these circuit breakers, etc., businesses have accelerated digital transformation. Now, in order for these businesses to accelerate digital transformation, there has been this massive demand for digital talent. Anyone with digital skills in marketing, in tech, in data science, etc. So you have a paradox in the market today with traditional skills being less in demand. So you still have high unemployment rates. But for certain types of skills, we're starting to see a shortage, a supply shortage. I think what you're going to see in 2021 is a massive amount of cross-border hiring for remote full-time professionals. Because what we are seeing also on our platform is lots of companies from the US, Canada, Singapore, Australia, a lot of places where they're talent short and there is a lack of these skills. They are now looking at bringing in people from other talent hubs as remote professionals to be able to meet that need, as companies have become more comfortable with long-term remote work. So, I think that's for a lot of you guys here, I'll touch upon it a bit later, is a massive opportunity. It means that the world can literally be your oyster when it comes to finding a role. And there's some interesting things that you require to be able to get there, which I will definitely touch upon later.
Yeah, Tulika, I fully agree with what you said, that there are certain roles which are in high demand. So I have some friends in tech who had kind of 3 offers with up to 120% hike. And they were kind of toying between these 3, that whether they should join, not join, what they should do. And on the other side, we have so many people losing their jobs. So yeah, right skilling is the key today. Absolutely. So we lost you, Sangeeta, for some time.
Yes, I'm extremely sorry. I don't know what happened. Zoom really kicked me out. I thought, the speakers were doing a good job. So I guess did I miss out on something? So I think let me pick up from where Gauri stopped. When it comes to the right skilling. So people have been into jobs, but is there something like upskilling, and is there something as continuous learning, Gauri, that you would like to speak about or tell us about that can help people to stay skilled? Like in Singapore, since I'm also in Singapore, we have something called lifelong learning, which is a government initiative, and it helps people to upskill so that they can keep up jobs or even switch careers. So is there something like that going on in India, or is it in an infancy, or what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I think Tulika brought out a very good perspective that we have to change, right, in terms of skills, technology, everything. So if I talk about as a country, if something is happening, like you said, government is supporting, no, but there is a realization today that you have to adapt, you have to keep learning. So unlearn, relearn, and keep on doing this. This is critical today, because even if we look at non-technical side of it, there are 3 things that are looked upon today. It becomes kind of people management skills, resilience, adaptability, agility. These are the things that are required today. So when it comes to hiring, if I have to hire somebody and I have 2 people with same technical expertise, I would test them on agility and resilience. because that's the need of the hour. We do not want people who are excellent at technical skills, but they cannot manage situations. So, and this was not in place. I mean, resilience as a skill was not being looked for earlier before COVID, unless it was a startup, like Tulika said in the beginning, that always busy and always on, right? So there you definitely need, but for established organization, resilience would not be in top 3. But today it has become one of the top most required skill. So how people are doing it here is they are going for certifications, they are going for part-time courses, executive programs, and they are on the rise. A lot many people are adapting for it. Coaching, so for me I would say more than certifications and these programs, what is important is how to learn and get adaptability. So if you have that in your mind, that you are continuously on the go, continuously on the learn, then definitely it is going to help you. So if I cite my example, I completed my engineering in 2004, and then psychology masters happened after 13 years of experience. So my mother was like, what are you doing? Because it's not very common in India as yet that you keep on learning. So she was like, why are you back to college? I mean, what makes you do that? And I was, no, we have to keep learning every day and every moment. And if I don't do that, I will be out of market. I will have no idea what's going on. So I would say learning agility is important. It would definitely vary with certification, which program you want to go for. But first learn how to have this learning agility.
Yeah, I think, Gauri, just to pick up on your point, we advise job seekers a lot, right? And you've touched upon it, but just a word of caution. I think what we saw is, and you'll find it everywhere. You find, okay, the market's changed. Everyone's understood that the market's changed, and so they all run to all these certifications.
Yes.
And they all get a certificate, and then they go and add those certificates on their LinkedIn profiles, right? I mean, a lot of my
Yeah.
doing it, so
Doesn't help. Yes.
it means nothing. And
Correct.
it's horrible to say, but it genuinely, and we know what edtech valuations look like. So there are a lot of people making a lot of money on this, but it genuinely means very, very little, and everything is here. And that's where that growth mindset and curiosity comes in. And biggest pieces, if nobody listens to the rest of this, if we have people who are job seekers here, I would say is, if you have done any certification, the first thing you leave this meeting and do is do even a pro bono project,
Yes.
but applying that certification, because there are too many people in this world who will remain unemployable. And I can bet you 2022 we're going to have a discussion on unemployability, because these certifications haven't made an employable digital workforce. They've just made an unemployable workforce with digital certifications. So, the only way to really learn is to be curious and apply. Start small, open a website, and just do Google Analytics of it yourself if you're a marketing person, but do something to actually put it in practice, rather than just collect certifications.
An excellent point, Tulika. Can I just add on to that and check how then, like when Gauri mentioned that you need agility, you need resilience, and would that also include soft skills? Because these are out of the general curriculum of things that people go to college or go to any university to learn. Like you said, start applying. But when job seekers come to you, when profiles come to you, how do you then segregate or understand that yes, this person has applied learning, or this person just has a set of certifications? So if you could give us some insight.
So firstly, I'll just say that, Snapant in the way we've built our algorithms is extremely, extremely unique, because we have built in a lot of decades of expertise into algorithms that match for what we call loosely a skill and culture fit. But what that actually comes down to is mapping three things in individuals. What they know how to do, what they can do, and what they want to do. Traditional recruitment is all about what you know how to do. Oh, you have this skill or this experience in a bank, you've done operations, okay, you can do operations in a bank. It is the worst predictor of success. You're in HR, but if somebody had told you an engineer, for example, Gauri, doesn't know how to do HR, they would have lost out on a lot of things, right? So that's the experience. But most traditional recruitment or that happens there. The second thing is something which we are touching upon, and we've built in psychometric assessments based on Big Five into our platform, and that maps competencies or what you know, how what you can do. So you may be a software engineer in a stable bank, you may be a software engineer in a startup. You both have the same maybe technical skills, but your competencies may be very, very different. And so you're more likely to succeed in certain environments as compared to others. And there we measure how people think. So your analytical and creative thinking, how you connect with others. So how you build new relationships, how you collaborate, how you execute. So result driven, quality driven, etc. And then also how you progress in your career. And for progressing in your career, we look at three things, your adaptability, your resilience, and your need for leadership. And we look at the top three requirements in any job and match people, and they're normalized for all your normal gender, years of experience, etc. But we match them. So these are things that are extremely important in your job search. It's not only about finding a job that you know how to do, but does that company and environment play to your unique competencies? And then finally, is that playing to where you want your career to go, which is actually the best predictor. If you really want something, you're likely to succeed in it.
Absolutely, and this seems like wow, you got some magic touch out there, Tulika. So I think yes, definitely, I would like to recommend SnapHunt to people who are looking for a job and say, see what you can find. Is that what you're really looking for? Because plenty of times, in my experience, you have the grit in you. You want to do something, but just because, like you said, traditionally CVs won't have the keywords that people are looking for, and you won't get a go. You won't even get called to that interview. Gauri, what do you have to say about this one?
Yeah, I think Tulika brought out a good point, and it's taking shape even in India. We call it as hiring for potential, right, Tulika? Rather than what you know as a subject matter expert, but we are hiring. Where there needs to be a balance again. I'm sure Tulika you will agree with this, because today's time we are looking at not generalist but a specialist also. And at the same time, we are also hiring for potential. So we are not looking at, like you rightly cited, multiple examples. So here, I'm not very sure how many recruiters, and more than HR professionals, it's about line managers who would be open to this idea. Because if it is a large organization, then IGP happens and it happens within the system, then people are okay. But it's still very difficult, and practically, I have seen multiple people facing this challenge. If they want to change career, it becomes a huge challenge for them. And Tulika rightly said that certifications don't help when you want to do certain things. So here again, I would say have this definitely, because you should know yourself first. If you are fully aware about yourself, what are your strengths and what you can do good, you have to bring to the table what values you are bringing from your previous job. So as a hiring manager or as a line manager, I would like to see, would you hit the road running, or I have to train you in something. So if you can relate these things, because whatever role we do, we get some competencies, we get expertise in that. And if we can tell a hiring manager that by doing this, I'm bringing this to you, and this will help in such a way that your whatever role I am being asked to do, I would be able to do it good. So it's like bringing value to the table is important. We have to connect these dots. What we have learned there and what we are bringing for this JD. And then it becomes important to understand the JD fully, which is generally not done. I have seen on the other side of table that most of the candidates would not look at the JD well. And that's where they are unable to connect. And then we will be left thinking, isne yahi kiya hai, and this person would be able to do only this much. So the thought process change is required on both sides.
To your point, I think you need all three. I don't think you need to know how to do it. You need to be able to, and you need to be motivated to. So,
you show also that you can.
So you may want to become a software engineer, but if you don't know how to be a software engineer, then no matter how motivated you are, you need to do.
Self-awareness is the key. Yeah.
So where probably you touched upon briefly is, these mid-career shifts. If there is anyone here who's making a mid-career shift, a great way to start is to say, what are the competencies I have built in my last few roles, and where are they the most transferable. So when you're making a mid-career shift, don't try to jump over something where you're likely to fall, but do a hop, skip, and jump. So apply something. So I've gone from being a traditional recruitment leader to a recruitment tech entrepreneur, but there is a thread, right?
Yeah.
If I jump from a traditional leadership thing to doing something completely different, I may or may not have succeeded, but there's definitely a bigger risk. Entrepreneur, you can do a bit more, but if you're looking for a job, you need to be able to translate those competencies into how you bring value or deliver value. Recruitment is sales. What I mean by that is, as a person who's going in for a job interview, please understand you're going to sell your competencies and yourself for a role. And the first role in sales is that, understand what the other person wants. So the job description, etc., and talk about how you can deliver that. And the second role is, of course, always be closing. So, show them how they can get value from you right away.
Wow, those are really some key points, and they're excellent. And now let's come back to what you left at a few minutes earlier, Tulika. It's again about remote hires. Yeah. So through this 2020, what I have realized is it's not just work from home. So you may be in the same city and working for your company. You may be in a completely different city or even a different country in a different part of the world. And until last year, if let's say you wanted to work in Singapore from India, and you wanted to be on the Singapore payroll, you would have to come here. You would have to get a working visa and then be here. So now, with all this shift, is there any change to the definition of working from home and remote working? Is it one and the same? Can people now dream of working for a company, a foreign company, without having to land on their shores and get that visa? I have like too many of these questions in my mind.
Gosh, there is nothing called remote work anymore, which is crazy. I mean, we just got there. In fact, we've been taking out a lot of content to support people as on this journey with all the terms they need to know now. But yeah, working from home simply means that is one type of remote work. You can also work from a cafe. You can work from a co-working space. You can work from another country. You can work from wherever you want. But what is coming out from a company's perspective is you have companies that are adopting a flexible work model. Now, these are companies that are still largely traditionally, going to go back to office, but are saying, hey, we've realized that we can collaborate, and the commute's too long, the traffic's too bad. So guys, come in, 2 or 3 times a week or a month or whatever, and the rest of the time you work from home. That's one. And I would call that sort of like a telecommute, remote telecommute, partial or fully telecommute. The second piece is companies saying, look, we don't have an office. We still hire people in a geographical, proximity, so that we can meet up casually from time to time. But we have realized this great saving, and we come together to collaborate in physical spaces. The rest of the time we work from home. And an extension to that is we are all working in the same time zone / country. But now you can be based anywhere, and maybe every couple of months we meet up. Okay, so this is the second sort of remote model. Then you have hybrids and full. So you'll have some of the team there and some not. And the third piece, which I think is probably the most exciting piece, is the remote distributed teams model. And the remote distributed teams model is, hey, you know what? I can just, instead of being stuck with only engineers I can find in Singapore, I can go out and hire, awesome front-end engineers in Vietnam. I can get amazing data scientists in India. I can get some fantastic app developers in Kyrgyzstan. It's an up-and-coming center for remote talent. And, I will save so many costs because I can give them great, above-market salaries and so on and so forth. So I think that's what's happened with remote work. And each of these requires a very different competence. So if you are a job seeker looking to work remotely, firstly ask yourself, right? Don't jump on a bandwagon because it's cute or it's a thing. Are you someone who likes or can work remotely? So if you're someone who needs inputs all the time or needs a social setup or atmosphere, then you're probably not cut out for, remote work. So Number two, which of these models actually apply the most to you? The third piece, the remote distributed piece, requires asynchronous communication, because you may be working across time zones. You you have to be someone who can solve problems on your own, because your team members may not be awake to help you with things. So as you adopt remote work, typically people who are quite independent, who tend to be problem solvers, who can who can collaborate asynchronously well, are people who are likely to thrive in these sort of remote distributed environments. Does that answer your?
Yes, yes, pretty much does. And I'm really thinking, where do I fall in? And I guess, Gauri, I'd like to check on you. Like, how is it in India now? Like when Tulika mentioned that companies may be interested in hiring a workforce from overseas. How does this work out? Like, how does this pan out for India? Are Indian companies also doing the same thing, that people are now back in their hometowns and they're working remotely? And are we also looking at a lot of freelance jobs coming up, or a lot of requirements where people can work remotely for foreign countries?
Yeah, so I have similar take like Tulika said. So while looking, those countries are looking out, we are looking within. So it's tier 2 and 3 cities have become hub for us to hire people. And so many professionals now, especially in Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, big cities, they have given up on their rented apartments. They are back home and they are operating from there. And people are as productive as they should be. However, I think beyond tech and certain other industries, this trend would not survive for long. That's what I am seeing, because when it comes to, like Tulika said, traditional industries, it's not going to work that ways, because many organizations have started publishing that they are, like JP Morgan had done it a few weeks ago, that there is a dip in productivity for the same reasons that we are discussing, that whether you have that correct. And then if you look at how work is happening today, it takes a lot of time. You have to make 10 calls to people, rather than you just get up and you go to the person next door and you speak to them. So yeah, there are both sides to it, but I think it's going to be more of a hybrid model. But there are industries who have already taken it to tier 2 and 3 cities, and they have saved lot of money in terms of rents that they were paying in larger cities. Similar trend, yes, it is happening, and I think the hybrid would be the order of the future.
Great. So I guess I'm more or less done with my questions. And from all the insights that I garner, I feel that times do look positive. Jobs are going up. Of course, there is a difference. Yeah, like some industries like hospitality and tourism and the airlines are going to take time to recover. But there are industries where there is a spurt, and at the moment, working from home still will continue for a bit. It also looks like people are not just looking at the keywords on one CV. So, like both of you mentioned, you have to really have 2 or 3 things in place, which is you have to have the skill. Even if you're trying to make a transition, you have to make sure that you are going to take smaller steps rather than, going for like a long jump and then ending in a pit, is what I absolutely understand. And yes, there is, remote working still holds good for at least some more time to go. Yeah, there's just one last question I wanted to ask. Do you have any thoughts on video CVs? Are they more in now, with the kind of jobs being offered and the number of people that are trying to reach out? Do video CVs make any sense? And are companies asking for them? So,
I can start. We actually have video profiles on our platform for the last few years. In fact, we were perhaps ahead of our time when we introduced it, and we've continued to build on that. We have asynchronous video interviews, video CVs, which are a free tool that candidates can use and download and add links to their CVs on our platform as well. I found that when I first introduced video on the platform, a lot of HR people were like, "Huh? Why would we do that? It's such a people's business. Why would we? And my philosophy on it was, look, as we do things remotely, recruitment or job search is about people meeting people and people getting a feel for people. And when though that is not there, you try to make that connect as rich as possible. And a video CV speaks 1,000 words, million, because a picture speaks 1,000 words. So imagine if you're moving, speaks so many words. So I think a video profile or a video summary of your profile is extremely powerful. We definitely see rising interest in it. And again, how it's changed in Q2 on LinkedIn, I had put up, Snap-on's video CVs, and lots of senior HR people saying, really, do you think we'll use it? And then of course, LinkedIn launched a video profile feature themselves in Q3. So it's definitely an area that has picked up in leaps and bounds. And what I've learned as a tech entrepreneur is that the world changes much faster than we give it credit for. As we go into, as we build more virtual connections with our colleagues, and we, we replace face-to-face gut with, other media, anything that can make your profile come alive is very useful. And a video CV can be very powerful if well done to do that.
Great. And just one more thing related to the video CV. What do you think should be the length? Because you don't want to telecast a whole, or TV opera on it. So what do you think? Like a minute or 2 minutes? What is the max length?
I have very strong opinions on this. In fact, on the platform, you when you record it, you can type and this thing, and I think we have some awesome content when you're recording it. But definitely under 2 minutes, and I would say even under 90 seconds. If you can't, summarize what you bring to the table and your personality in that, you're not telling your life story on it. You are giving a person a glimpse of who you really are.
Great. Thanks for that. So,
just to add to it, Sangeeta.
Yeah, sure, Gauri.
This trend is definitely picking up, but I still don't know how would it be used in level 1. I'm sure Tulika will have some answers, because our algorithms are yet not ready to deal with video CVs. But definitely, once the shortlisting is done, that's the first thing which should be done. And I agree with Tulika. I think 60 seconds is what it should take for you to explain who you are.
We are actually adding video CVs in the platform, Gauri. We have them along with the paper profile, with the candidate profile. And I'll tell you use cases where it's changing the world. Campus hiring. You can't go to
yes.
Where else do you meet 100 kids in 100, and do away with the GD around in that sense?
But so, that's not automated, right? You have to look at it. Some human has to look at it.
The point is, we could run a gazillion. We have data science which can run lots of stuff, and we're already giving you an idea on the person's profile, etc. But the fact of the matter is, you as a recruiter, the way you think is you see a person and you know quickly, where you want to go. The video CV just does that. It does it in the first, 30 seconds. But so in a lot of these cases where you want to get a quick feel of a person, it is better than a phone screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great to know that. So I'm sure that a lot of job seekers now know how to stand out, which brings me to my last question, which is, could both of you give me the top 3 points that you would recommend any job seeker? Like, how do they make sure they stand out?
Yeah, so should I start?
Yes, please.
I think networking is first thing, because most of the jobs are closing with networking, with references. You don't see many jobs coming on portals, even LinkedIn. And if you apply somewhere, then it's kind of 1,000 people have already applied. So your CV is not going to be checked. So that's one thing, networking. And we have to learn now digital networking. So mantra that I have used, and that's how we have also connected, Sangeeta, that connect with people and then speak to them. And it can be a Zoom call, or it can be a short networking call wherein you have kind of 3 things. You introduce yourself, you check with the other person who he or she is, and then you come up with where you can collaborate. So if you just keep 5 minutes for each, and collaboration you can keep say 15-20 minutes, within half an hour you can meet the person. But in the first go, never request for a job, or never request for whatever your main intent is, because that puts people off. I receive a lot of requests on LinkedIn inbox, and where people will simply say, connect, and they will immediately write that this is my CV. Can you give me a job? And I have no clue who they are. Many a times they will write that this is my, I am on LinkedIn. Can you please check my LinkedIn profile and get me a job? So I'm sure nobody's going to do that. Nobody has that much time. So these things will not work. First, network, connect, be active on LinkedIn, check with their post, check out what they are writing, what their interests are, and then connect with them. So that is one thing. Second is mentor. Importance of mentor can never be overemphasized, because they are the ones who can help you speed up your progress, and they are there already. They know what goes on in making that. So do have a mentor in different areas. So if I'm a HR professional, I would have one for that, but I may also have somebody for marketing, because that's important today. So we have to do that. Mentoring is critical. And third is, we discussed a lot on it, and I'm sure everybody knows. And like reskilling and upskilling is required, whether it is a job seeker or somebody who is already in the job. So it doesn't matter. But yeah, Zulika brought out a brilliant point that certifications don't help. What I have seen with certifications is, if you're already doing some job and you want to enhance your knowledge, take it to next level, then certification helps. But yeah, your advice is great, that if you have taken something, then at least use it, volunteer. So that's another thing which really helps, volunteering to increase your net worth, or volunteering to increase your knowledge in terms of whatever you have learned, apply. So these three things I would like to share.
That's fabulous, Gauri. Thank you so much. Tulika, what is your take on it? What are your top three?
I think the first thing is stop and understand what value you are bringing to a table. When you get a job, you give value, and in exchange for that value, you get money, which is called a salary. So you have to understand, in the world that you are in today, what is it that you are going to contribute, and write it down on a piece of paper and learn to articulate that value, right? Once you have understood what value you are bringing to the table, and it has to be quantifiable value. I'm a great person, nobody's going to hire me because I'm a great or hardworking person. So it has to be more quantifiable. Be your worst cynic when you're writing that, right? Once you've figured out that, prepare a very clear target list of companies that are likely to appreciate that value. Few places that you by applying to all jobs every day, you're not going to find a job. Focus those efforts in places where you are most likely to be appreciated. Now, what should those companies be? Number one, companies that have large teams of people like you, i.e., your value is something they look for all the time, whether they have a job or not. Secondly, companies where maybe your ex-colleagues have gone to work. Why? They're likely to like people like you, and you're likely to even be a culture fit of some sort, right? So have a look at companies that are tied to your industry. Could be another thing. So for example, people ask me, oh, I was from hospitality, I lost my job, now what do I do? Well, you still build incredible competencies around relationship management, etc. Try to see, could that be applied, for example, in personal banking, as an example, right? So you may want to see what are those competencies and what are allied industries, and some other people would have already made those shifts in your network. So try to identify that target list of companies. So value, target list of companies, then make sure that you target these companies via networks with warm introductions, and have an ask. Networking for networking's sake is absolutely useless. Have a very clear target and have an ask to people that you have already cultivated relationships with, not me randomly on LinkedIn. I don't know you, I don't owe you anything, right? So that doesn't work. And I'll add a last point just to call, on that, is when you are trying to ask people for something, like in networking, and throughout your recruitment process, do it in terms of how it's going to help them. So rather than, could you have a look at my CV? Let's say you are heading HR in an organization. If somebody gets a message like, could you look at my CV? Why? Do I owe you anything? I have so much to do in my day. I have nothing to do. Instead, if you say, look, I love what you guys are doing at XYZ Bank. I bring with me these skills, and so I believe I can be very valuable to the plans that you get. Can we have a quick chat? There you have an ask. So you asked for a chat, but you've done it by demonstrating that value that I said in point number one. So whether it's in your follow-ups, people write silly stuff like, oh, I haven't heard back from you yet. You say stuff like that to people, they're not going to answer you. But if you say, hey, I'm sure you guys are busy, here are 3 ideas on the digital marketing piece which I thought you guys could find interesting, would you happy to get on a call if you'd like to discuss in more detail? So I'm already, if I'm saying I'm somebody who's an innovator, for example, I'm already coming out with these ideas. So I'm following up also while bringing value. So and that's why I say it's like a sales process. So that's what I would leave.
Wow, that was really insightful, both Gauri and Tulika. I'm going to consolidate. I was taking notes while you guys were speaking, and I'm going to definitely put it up on LinkedIn for people who've missed out, the incredible chat and the discussion that we've had. I can't thank you enough. But as of now, to the participants that are here, if you have any questions for our speakers, please key in those now. And I will definitely check with them how much more time they can wait, and we will take only those many questions. We cannot keep going on. I already have 2 questions lining up. So can we go ahead with the 2 questions first? Okay, so I think this one, both Tulika and Gauri, anyone who would like to answer. So there is this person who's saying that, how do you manage equilibrium in terms of this remote workspaces? Because leadership, project management, and pressure management goes hand in hand. And remote work has essentially created a lot of collisions. So how do you, manage this?
I mean, I'll tell you as a leader, my entire team works remotely in a couple of countries. Um, whether you're sitting, so remote work or leading remotely comes with its own sets of advantages and challenges. And we're still very early in the journey of, how we, I guess, effectively hire, onboard, engage, upskill, reskill, develop, mentor, coach, and exit teams remotely. So having said that, I've seen some incredible examples of this around me, and I can tell you that my team, my team and I, we are closer than ever. Even though today we celebrated a remote birthday, with a virtual cake before this panel discussion, etc. So we may not be there to do it all together. A few things I think become very important in remote work. Number one, being extremely conscientious about one's time. So, making sure you plan your meetings, you plan your catch-ups, you are, extremely methodical about having one-on-ones with your team, spending that extra time. So you manage and you're conscious of those team meetings, those stand-ups, those things like that. That's one. Number two, being much more transparent about one's vision. The big difference between remote work and on-site work is in on-site work, it's you can have a monitoring culture. Are people working? Yeah, they don't need to see the big picture, they need to execute. In remote work, it's a solution culture. You are not engaged any longer on tasks, you are engaged on results. And in order to give results, you need to buy into the vision. So for many companies where maybe they just hired people to do stuff, they're going to struggle with remote work because they're used to kind of overseeing it. But for leaders or project managers who tend to share vision, who tend to get team buy-in, who invest a little bit more time in communicating both the goods and the bads, I think, and who tend to empower their team and have more of a bottom-up culture, I think remote work works very well.
Great. And here is a very specific question. Here's a lady who's attending, and she says that she has 20 over years of experience in corporate and transaction banking and financial institutional sales, and she's been reaching out on LinkedIn to consultants in Singapore and Hong Kong for international roles at regional level. However, banks seem to be restricting recruitment to local talent. So she wants to know your views on, uh, what would be the best method to look for international postings while being based in India?
No.
Gauri, would you like to take that? Sorry.
Sure. No.
Yeah, I think banking, it would take some time for banks to go remote that ways, because it's a kind of very conventional things that we are doing in banking. I have seen a lot of, because I come from that industry, so I've seen a lot of offers dropping at this point of time. Many people were to settle abroad, especially Singapore and some other countries, and it did not happen. So even after 1 year or in 9 months, they have not been called back. uh, I I would suggest that continue to try within your organization if it is possible, because that is much more closer to you, and it is much more feasible. That I have seen that this happens very quickly in comparison to looking outside. And also rely on your network, where you would have 20 years of experience, means you would have touched so many bankers, right? So rely on that. If there's someone who's already there, try to connect with them that ways and try to go abroad by using that connections. But yes, for this, one will have to really wait for some more time.
Okay. Uh, Great. And I think I have just one last question, if we don't mind. This person is asking if there are gaps in their CV and they're returning to work. So she's a woman. Uh, how then, in this market, do you stand a chance to kind of get employed again? Because there's already quite a bit of competition, is what she's writing.
If there was any time where a gap in your CV doesn't matter as much, it's now. Lots of people have a gap in their CV, and maybe 4 5 years ago, I mean, you could have a gap because you were unemployed, retrenched. You could be a mother, you could have taken time off work, various reasons, right? I think what's happened with COVID is it's been a great equalizer in terms of gaps, because a lot of really good and talented professionals have lost their jobs and not been able to find jobs. Not because of their skills, but just because companies have, across many sectors have really, really struggled. So I think gaps in your CV are not a problem unless you make them into a problem. If you become defensive about gaps in your CV, that's a bigger exclamation / red flag than rather you owning it. So for example, if you've got a gap because you took some time out in your personal life, own it, and how that has helped you grow as a human being, right? If you've had gaps because you've been retrenched due to COVID, own it and talk about how that's been an incredible opportunity for you to spend time with your family, learn new things, take some time out to understand it, and front foot it. So be open, be truthful, and front foot your gaps. Then they're not that scary. Or, I mean, Gauri, I'd love to hear from you if you agree, but then I think they don't matter as much to recruiters.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can also utilize your time in volunteering, which is related to the competencies that you are looking at, and that you can use as an experience. I've seen lot many my friends in my circle, because HR was also one of the function, which was there was a huge cut down there. So a lot many people went with different forums. Whichever area you are coming from, there will be some forums which will help you in terms of volunteering and help you enhance your competencies. So that would be one thing. And now that everybody is working remotely, there are opportunities wherein you can connect with people. And like I said in the beginning, I run this lean in circle. So we have people. Lean in anywhere would support you in terms of a large network, in terms of lot many things they teach you. So you can join some network like that, or you can go for mentoring like this Star in Me. There are a lot many other forums where you can go. There's She Jobs. So lot many organizations today have this goal that they have to increase diversity percentage, and that's where they have customized program for women coming back to workforce after their maternity break or any other break. So you leverage on those. Go to websites of large organizations. If you Google, you will get a lot of data there. If you go on LinkedIn and you try to find that, you will get a lot of things there. And I'm sure it's a brightest time, like Tulika said. Yes.
Great. Wow, it's been insightful even personally for me, and I can't thank both of you enough. And to our audience, yes, we made a cold connect on LinkedIn and then it became a warm one. So what they told you really works. And definitely, I would just like to sum up by saying that the job industry or the job market it doesn't look too rosy, but it isn't bad. We can see that there is some recovery. As I heard that there could be a V-shaped recovery or a W-shaped recovery, but we are moving ahead. We are pacing forward. Remote work seems to be the thing that is working for right now, and we can try and make the best of it, whether it's local remote or international remote. Companies are also more open about it. If you're trying to stand out, video CVs also seem to be a good bet. And it may not help at the first level, but when you're shortlisted, a 60-second sales pitch of yourself could be good enough to get you in. And I guess the top three takeaways from both our experts today, I think the common thing here is your network. Your network is definitely your network, as we keep hearing and reading all the time. But do not just go asking for a job. Have a cold contact, have a warm contact, and more importantly, have something to offer. Do not just go asking for things. So it's like a barter. You have something to offer, which is of value to the person you're reaching out to. They are definitely likely to return your call. And mentorship, yes, mentorship is important. And if someone has done it successfully, they are more likely to tell you how you can do it either the same way, or you can make some amends, but go ahead in that direction. There was one more point on, do not just go on applying, like do not go and make 100 applications today because there are openings that you can see in the market. Target the companies, especially where you know people. So again, where you find your ex-colleagues, or where you find that this company has a certain cultural fit and you think you can fit in, those companies are more likely to hire you. And also, there is something about volunteering. So show things that you have been learning, especially if you have a gap, or you've been taking time off, or you've done a certification. If you want to show how it works, go do some pro bono sessions and help people realize that, hey, you have added real value to yourself. This is not just on paper. This is not just to show on LinkedIn or a display of your digital value. So I guess I've summed it all up, and a big thank you to everyone who's attended. And I shall probably put the video in a small snapshot of this discussion for people who've missed out, because there are plenty who were interested. But maybe it's a time, some people are busy with meetings. And again, a very big thank you to both Gauri and Tulika for this amazing session. And could I quickly take a picture? Yeah, so are we ready? 3, 2, 1. All right. And yep, that was a good one. That was a good first take on it. And thanks very much for being on Expert Speak. I'm Sangeeta Deshpande, and I'm sure I'll be back with some more experts sometime next month. Until then, you are free to connect with both Tulika and Gauri. They are extremely personable people, and like Tulika mentioned, do not just go, or like Gauri mentioned, do not just go and tell them, look at my CV and give me a job. Don't do that. But other than that, I'm sure you can go check out what SnapHunter's into. It seems like a rather interesting platform. And Gauri is into so many of these leadership initiatives outside of work. Go get in touch with her, especially people who have asked specific questions who are in India. I think it would be nice if you could go and meet her sometime if you're somewhere around Mumbai. So that's all from me. A big thank you, and I guess we can end on a very smiley note today. Sorry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was amazing having this conversation.
Thanks a lot. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.